As a group, gospel singers have been labeled those who didn't sell out, meaning that the pursuit of a gospel career was not undertaken for its financial reward, but usually due to a deep belief in a religious ideal. This is a difficult thing in a sometimes blatantly commercial world. In the theatrical world, there are also a few pursuers of the gospel, people who have an ideal as their guiding force. They project an unshakable faith in the dignity of mankind. I have a friend here who is a living illustration of this, Ms. Cicely Tyson.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Cicely, thank you for coming on
Thank
Black
you.
Omnibus.
It's my pleasure.
Yet another spectacular hairstyle. What do you call that?
Well, I don't know that this one has any specific name, but my hairdresser, Omar, refers to it as African hair sculpture.
I see.
And as you know, it takes anywhere from 8 to 10 hours to do. We finally decided that she works better on me when I sleep. So now when I go prepare to spend about 8 hours sleeping.
You answered that question with great patience. I know everybody's always stopping you and asking you. I remember when I had the great fortune of working opposite Miss Tyson in a play called The Blacks by Jean Genet.
Oh, my heavens. Yes.
And you had one of the first naturals, or afros then.
Yes, I cut it off prior to doing The Blacks. As a matter of fact, Jimmy, I remember when I auditioned for The Blacks, my first concern was the way I was wearing my hair. When I realized that I was going to get the role, I turned to Sidney Bernstein and Jean Frankel, and I said, what should I do about my hair? And they said, your hair, leave it that way. It works perfectly for the play. And indeed it did. And of course that lasted for 3 years, and there I was.
On stage, that was a sort of a stylized production.
Yes.
But then you took it into a modern character on television.
Yes, on television, East Side, West Side. And when I screen tested for it, I was concerned, since I was so premature, I was concerned that they would not accept it. And when I screen tested for the role, I screen tested with a wig. And then I got a message that George Scott did not want the wig, and he wanted me with my natural. So I just got rid of the wig.
And no one was
into that at that time.
It was not common at all.
As a matter of fact, it brought about a great deal of feeling amongst hairdressers, because I began to get a lot of mail stating that they were losing their customers simply because they were beginning to cut off their hair because this actress was, quote, wearing her hair nappy.
Nappy, right. Is this close to anything you had in the film Sounder?
Well, when I did Sounder, I realized, since it was set in the 1930s, that at that time women were very much into the braiding, and they were either wearing it in very small braids or they were cornrowing. But it was a very crude way. And so I wear it cornrowed in the movie, but it's crudely done. It's not as elegantly done as this is. It's just the way I would normally do it if I did it. And it's just cornrowed into the center. And do you know something? When I began to look for someone in Baton Rouge to do it, they didn't know what I was talking about. They call it French plait in some areas.
Oh.
And so when I said I want someone to cornrow my hair, they were a little concerned because they didn't understand. And I finally found a professor's wife who had been to Africa, and she learned to do it there. And she was the one that did it for me for the film.
What is the story that you're going to relate to us now regarding our heritage?
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things that I find myself being concerned about is our tendency to forget. One of the reasons why I'm so proud of Sounder is that it is part of our history. And I think as we move along and we move away from the things that we consider in some way unpleasant or depressing, that we tend to forget that those sometimes are the rocks on which we are standing. And what I would like to relate to today is something that happened, well, about 10 or 12 years ago, right here in our society, where we, though we are human beings. We're not allowed to enter certain schools, and it has to do with a story that a 15-year-old girl related to someone regarding her experience of trying to get into Little Rock High School. It's an excerpt from In White America.
Would my sitting here distract you?
Oh, I don't think so.
Would you please?
No, okay. The night before, I was so excited, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I was about the first one up. While I was pressing my black and white dress, I had made it to wear on my first day of school. My little brother turned on the TV set. They were talking about a crowd of people standing in front of the school. The man on TV said he wondered if we were going to show up that morning. Mother, who was in the kitchen fixing breakfast, called, "Turn that TV off." She was so upset and nervous. I wanted to comfort her, and so I said, "Oh, Mother, don't worry." Dad was walking back and forth from room to room. He was chewing on his pipe, and he had a cigar in his hand, but he didn't light either one of them. I guess it might have been funny, but he was so nervous. Before I left home, Mother called us all into the living room and said we should have a word of prayer. Then I caught the bus, and I got off a block away from the school. There was a large crowd of people standing across the street from the soldiers guarding Central. As I walked down, the crowd suddenly got very quiet. For a moment, all I could hear was a shuffling of their feet. And then someone shouted, "Here she comes, get ready." The crowd started moving slowly, following me and calling me names. I wasn't scared, just a little nervous. But then my knees began to shake, and I began to wonder if I could make it to the center entrance, a block away. I still wasn't scared, just a little frightened, because all the time I kept saying, well, the guards will protect me. It was the longest block I ever walked in my whole life. When I got right in front of the school, I walked up to a guard. He looked straight ahead of him and didn't move to let me pass. I stood looking at the school. It looked so big. Just then, a guard let some of the white students go through. The crowd was very quiet. I guess they were waiting to see what was going to happen. When I was able to steady my knees, I walked up to the guard who had let the white students through. He too didn't move. When I tried to squeeze past him, he raised his bayonet. Then the other guards closed in and they raised their bayonets. They glared at me with a mean look, and I was very frightened. I didn't know what to do. I turned around, and the crowd came towards me. Someone started yelling, "Lynch her! Lynch her!" I tried to see a friendly face somewhere in the mob. I looked into the face of an old woman. It seemed a kind face, but when I looked at her again, she spat on me. The crowd moved closer and closer, yelling, "No nigger bitch is gonna get into our school. Get out of here!" I looked down the block and saw a bench by the bus stop. I thought, if I could only make it to that bench, I'll be safe. I don't know why I thought the bench was a safe place for me, but I started walking towards it. I tried to shut out of my mind all of the things that were shouting. I kept saying to myself, if I could just make it to that bench, if I could make it to that bench, if I could just make it to that bench, I'll be safe. When I finally got there, I don't think I could have walked another step. I sat down. But then the mob started out Again, they started yelling, "Drag her to this tree. Let's take care of the nigger." Just then, a white man sat down beside me. He put his arm around me and patted my shoulder. When the bus came, I got on. I don't remember much about the bus stop. The next thing I remember, I was standing in front of the school for the blind where Mother works. I started running up the stairs, and I didn't stop till I got to Mother's classroom. Mother was standing at the window with her head bowed. She must have sensed that I was there because she turned around. She looked as though she had been crying, and I wanted to tell her that I was all right, but I couldn't speak. She put her arms around me, and I cried.
You've just seen Academy Award nominee Ms. Cicely Tyson performing an excerpt from